financial discussions, you seem to believe that the control groups of the financial elites and whatnot can keep their game going more or less indefinitely until they're exposed or something happens. On the other hand, Richard seems to think that things are already happening enough through the critical mass of computing and whatnot to blow the cover off the control groups, or at least their control. My question for both of you is, I understand how the control group in the military and the private industry came to be created in the nexus of the Cold War, but I wonder, how do you see that group being self-reproducing now and in the future? Is it being reproduced institutionally, or is it personal? Is it social? How does it keep going at this point?
You're asking, how does the military establishment keep going? I'm
well,
understanding what you're asking.
Well, I think I'm asking if we're imputing a control group at financial and political and government levels, including the military, how does that control group continue? Is it all based in the military, or do we think that there is, in fact, this elite of politicians and industrialists and whatnot that are sitting on this technology? How does that group, how does that circle perpetuate itself?
I'm sure Catherine has thoughts on this. I'll just offer, I do think that we're headed toward we're in a war right now. The war is between those few people who've got a preponderance of power and information against the many of us who have developed a new infrastructure to fight it. So that's a war that's happening. It's a war over information, it's a war over freedom, and really our own sovereignty. I think that the group that's been in power, I think the military, U.S. military, is a police force. And it's a police force that doesn't work for you and me. It doesn't even work for the U.S. government. It works for international financial groups. We understand that presidents aren't elected, they're selected. They're selected. And we know that the controllers of national security in each of the parties, whether it's Henry Kissinger or Zbigniew Brzezinski, both have worked for David Rockefeller. I mean, that's national security policy. So there's a control. It's financial. It sits behind every president, and that determines U.S. foreign policy. So that's where it's at. And within the black budget world, what we can call the world of special access programs and whatnot, we know that the dominant power of those is not U.S. DOD, but rather private contractors and private money. So it's all private money. I mean, they get their hooks. If we were controlled trillions of dollars and we were twiddling our thumbs and deciding how can we make our money work for us this year, we wouldn't do investments like, poor slobs around the world. We would control events, and we would control governments, and we would control policies. And I think the U.S. military is the best police force in the world, so that's the best force to control, and they exercise that control through the office of the president and National Security Council and all that. But I don't know the answer.
Well, Richard, at last count, about 800,000 odd of them are being laid off.
If there's a federal shutdown, but not for DARPA and not for a lot of the military and the intelligence community. They have their own DARPA's still creating Terminators, so they haven't shut down.
Statistically, it's 83% of the government still functional, and then the ones they shut down don't have to be. They did it to hurt people, but it's backfiring because all the people are starting to revolt. You heard the national parks and stuff. People are breaking through the barriers. Veterans are getting arrested, and even the people who were not awakening are awakening.
Richard, does your narrative by any chance extend behind that Hermes veil to what I call the Babylonian priesthood, with really the uber lords of the wealthy families that we're talking about? You need to say good old-fashioned Canaanite ritualism.
Well, I hesitate to explore that because it's not a world that I inhabit. But I do.
But you do, sir. You do inhabit that world.
I don't inhabit their world. They haven't invited me to their parties. But, I mean, I guess what you're asking, I suspect that there's a very, very specific agenda in a very, very closed group. This group may have existed for a long, long time.
Thank you.
Yes, and that's quite right.
I just wanted that on the record. Thank you so much.
Catherine, would you like to respond to?
Very, very simply, I said it before, in that world, because unfortunately I was invited in, the dominant organizing principle is conspiracies. And so they're very good at conspiracies, but again, as the British poet said, we are many, they are few. We just need to get better at conspiracies than they are. Don't worry about whether or not there is a conspiracy, because there certainly is one. Just, if you're not in a conspiracy, then you need to start one.
We have one more. Oh, yes.
Wait. I think it's very important.
Yes.
Excuse me, I apologize. I think it's very important that we realize that what we're doing is actually the opposite of that. And as much as we feed into that, we feed into needing money, into the scarcity, into the governing of each other rather than governing of the self. Please let me finish. Into the hiding, the secrets, rather than just vibrating in the truth and in the love, then we're still feeding that machine. And the reason that that machine continues is because we continue to fuel it with our belief systems and our actions. And these kinds of things have the opportunity to create that change, but they have to go completely outside the box. We're not looking for funding. We're not looking for to be allowed to do something. We're not looking for permission. We're doing what's right now, starting within ourselves, within our families, within our communities. And that's not money, that's not power, that's not different aggregates. That's all of us doing what's right, as much as we know in every moment.
I think we all agree with that.
We still need to act together.
Indeed, and there is also a homily that's worthy of stating, which is that each man, I should say each human, in their own way, in their own time.
Beautiful, absolutely. Jeroen would be our last.
I only have a short thing to say before I forget again. The only criticism that I got from the Holland conference is that I forgot to mention and to thank certain people. And I want to thank all of you, because you're making this happening together with us. Without you, there's no conference. Derek, of course, but we're going to talk about Derek tomorrow, who was really the driving force behind this conference. I want to thank Shul team, they sponsored us. Gaian TV, they sponsored us. There are some private persons here that I'm not going to mention, but those persons know who sponsored us. We had a crowdfunding campaign, those people sponsored us. We have the live stream now going, donations are coming in, so I want to thank the streamers. And another person that I want to thank is this gentleman, because if you talk about volunteers and putting money in and your butt on the line, this gentleman owns a printing company in Holland, and he said, I want to do a GlobalBEM magazine. I'm going to fund it out of my own pocket. We will see how it goes. And I would suggest to everybody, if you want to stay informed about GlobalBEM, about technologies, about consciousness, about the implications, then subscribe to the magazine. And we also invite everybody to be involved in the magazine. If you have articles, you want to write a column, whatever, contact this gentleman. He's got a stand outside, a booth. So I think that was basically it for today.
Thank you.
In fact, when it comes to thanking Jeroen and Robert and the GlobalBEM team is absolutely incredible for what they have done. Take a bow, Jeroen. Take a bow.
Let's do that at the end of the conference.
Okay, let's do it again.
And then I'm going to thank again all volunteers.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Thanks so much for this, your beautiful participation, and thank you all of the panelists for being here, and my dear friend and colleague Sasha Stone for moderating this with me. Literally in about 3 to 4 minutes, Josh's ship film will be shown right here. For those of you who would like to see it on smart meter.